Disney has a problem. The Marvels is not only the biggest flop in the MCU history, but is even on track to be the biggest flop in the whole history of cinema. With its recent drop of 78 to 79%, it's the greatest drop ever seen in the history of all comic book movies, even greater than The Flash and Morbius. With it fallen well below even the worst estimates, and when your starting figures are not that high, with a drop like this, it leads to an abysmal second and third week of earnings that is already getting pulled from some cinemas. For context, the first Captain Marvel ran for 6 weeks before this happened. On the same scale, The Flash, for instance, had a production budget of $200 million. That is lower than the budget for the Marvels and is still higher than the first and second week earnings with a smaller drop. The Flash is now seen as one of the worst performing movies of all time, and the Marvel's theatre run is looking to be in a very similar trajectory to The Flash. But this movie is in worse shape because of its higher budget. The ratio used to find out if a movie is profitable in recent times is 2.5 times the production budget, which is why even movies that seem to be making more money than the budget are still classed as failures. Because the companies don't take all the money, you have the ticket price and all the other costs like marketing to add on. This means the Marvels with its $274 million budget, which was before more reshoots and rework done, probably coming closer to $300 million, needs at least $700 to hit the profit number, and this is taken off the $50 million they got for shooting in the UK as an incentive. Now John Carter has held the crown of one, if not the biggest flops of all time, and with the movie already struggling to make it past $200 million, at this rate it's looking closer to a $500 million loss on the Marvels, making it one of the biggest bombs of all time, and another under Disney's belt. There are many reasons for this failure. Some, like Stephen King, have put some of this rejection of the Marvels to adolescent fanboy hate, yuck girls. How about one of the biggest movies of the year just so happened to be Barbie, raking in $1.44 billion? That just goes to show the amount of money that can be made off a girls brand. A movie made by women, for women, and marketed to women. Meaning, if only boys or men did not like the movie, then there should have been no problem, as all the women who went to see Barbie could easily have made the Marvels a success. But that's not the case, strangely. They are not interested either. Another point to King with how many modern movies and media are marketed.
And if you don't like my politics, don't buy my book. Problem solved.
This antagonizing attitude against their own fans, telling them not to see the movie, or in this case, buy their book, is an incredibly strange thing to do. There is an active hate for fans, calling them toxic and haters, for any criticism they have, no matter how well thought out or accurate it may be. Rather than having a discussion, they spread division, pitting one side against another. This never used to be the case in the marketing, as you're actively reducing the amount of money you can make. Now they prefer consumers, people who do not know the history of the product and accept any changes, unlike the fans who would notice, allowing the writers to change it however they wish, without any regard to the stories and characters that help build it up into the famous IP it has become. Calling fans gatekeepers when they cannot in any way dictate what a company that owns and controls the IP does, only if they will buy it. If it's any good and wanting to share with others, or telling their friends, even writing a review, that it's not, then the company, with these sales figures, creates more products around what's sold. That is all the power a normal person has, their wallet. The fans are your target audience, but most are happy for changes in the IP, as long as they remain true to the already established world, lore and characters, not just forced in for the latest fad. The fans are your greatest customers, and free marketing, not toxic like many are now told.
World, this culture of toxic fandom. If you make a movie, especially if you make a superhero movie, great intentions, but there are always going to be a small yet vocal group of people there can kind of just be toxic.
When it comes to fans, it is a fan's right to have whatever opinion they want to have. And people are going to be upset because, especially when you're talking about books or games, because you're never going to be the exact person who they had in their head or who they played on Witcher 3, for example. I don't necessarily consider that toxic. I just consider that passionate.
In contrast to this, the director to the Marvels, Nia DaCosta, who describes critics as virulent, violent, racist, sexist and homophobic, that the only fans she wants are ones who sing her praise on the side of light, as she calls it. The consumer is all they want, that has no attachment to the legacy of the IP, like the fans that will move on to the next film quickly, which may give movies a good short-term return, but will not help on the long-term profits when something else catches their attention. The other marketing speak often used is if you cannot see yourself in the movie, how can you relate to the characters? Don't care about the traits, personality and characteristics that make up an interesting character. Which is why movies have never had anything but humans in, as how can we relate to them? Just like the character Wall-E. Who could? He is a robot. I am not. How can we relate to these robots? That must mean everyone disliked the film, right? Wrong. WALL-E is fantastic. How about a character from Star Wars like Yoda, Woody and Buzz from Toy Story, Shrek and Puss in Boots are all not human yet loved. People forget the superficial, as there have been thousands of cute or terrifying characters and creatures, yet most are forgotten for the ones who actually have something more to them than their looks. You remember their stories, actions and personality. This superficial reason told to people recently when marked in certain movies. Why would men, by their own ambition, want to see this film?
Put a ticket in and make it lame!
Men are barely represented, let alone speak. By their own logic, we cannot relate to any of these characters. Now I don't believe that rubbish, and nor do most people, but it's often been used as a reason to make changes in a movie, to race and gender swap, because how can we relate to the characters if we don't see ourselves?
What is this about? This isn't about you.
Right.
Honestly though, the reason for this movie failing so hard, it's just crap. No matter how much you try to polish it, it's a turd about a character who was poorly set up in her first film, that very few people are interested in seeing again. But like any character, it could have worked with much better writing. However, that's not what we got. This leads to one of the main reasons all the goodwill and trust that the MCU has built over the years has gone. The days where people are willing to go out and see every film that Disney releases no questions asked is over. People do not trust Disney to create an entertaining, interesting story after the recent failures, be it the Dial of Destiny, the recent Star Wars trilogy, to the MCU. Movies that it has crapped out, like Thor Love and Thunder, Doctor Strange Mom, Eternals, and Ant-Man Quantumania, have meant that people are taking a wait-and-see approach, watching trailers, listening to people's advice that they trust, who have seen the film and formed an opinion of the movie before seeing it, rather than blindly trusting Disney to create something entertaining, and if it's worth their hard-earned money. Let alone the glut of TV shows that have also been rubbish, that most people don't even watch or know about, hidden behind a paywall called Disney Plus, but that you need to see to follow along with the films, causing confusion in the MCU. To keep their shareholders happy and keep subscriptions high on Disney Plus, to feed the hungry beast that is the subscription model, that always needs new content to keep people interested in paying that subscription. This confusion where everything is supposed to be connected, yet it's all disjointed at the same time, leading to a mess of world-ending conclusions like the giant celestial in the sea that no one talks about, to characters seemingly changing personality between projects. The sheer amount of content, more minutes than Phase 1 to 3 combined, is just too much. Some people call it superhero fatigue, but it's simply Disney have oversaturated the market with all this content. With all this quantity, the quality has gone down the toilet. If there were good superhero movies, people would go and see them. And it's the same for any film. Eventually the good rises to the top with word of mouth, even if they are overlooked on release, in some cases becoming cult classics and getting sequels. However, opening Pandora's box with the multiverse stuff was not a good idea. Every death or action does not matter. They can just get the same character or item from a different universe to fix their problems, as was the case in Endgame and Doctor Strange Mom. Also, that each project seems to have a different way the multiverse works. It's nonsense that people don't understand and can't follow along with. All this has meant that the trust is gone, and it's very hard to get back once it's lost, and will take a large amount of good writing and smart business decisions on Disney's part, and multiple hit movies to ever see these properties rise to the world blockbuster heights seen before. The other main reason this is going to be an absolute flop, and many movies are nowadays, is the insane budgets. Not every movie has to be a blockbuster and should not be expected to be. Steven Spielberg spoke in 2013 about how he predicts half a dozen $250 million movies failing in quick succession, that there's going to be an eventual implosion or a big meltdown with the numbers of blockbusters in one summer, those big sort of tentpole superhero movies. There's going to come a time where 2 or 3 or 4 of them in a row didn't work. In other words, oversaturation, all to make more money for their shareholders without any care for the general audiences. Disney seems to think throwing more money at a movie will fix it and make it a success. The Marvels should have had a budget between 50 to 100 million, not 300. That amount of money should never have been spent. This is very much the case with Disney's latest movie, Wish, another 200 million film made by Pixar that should have been half that budget, at least, and is another film on the way to losing Disney money with this insane budget. That amount only makes sense for bigger films like the Avengers team-up movie, or a sequel to a movie that has made $2 billion, like the Avatar movies, which is incredibly heavy on cutting-edge CGI, or multiple movies shot back-to-back in a row, like Lord of the Rings. If the Marvels was in that price range, it would have been a minor success to a minor flop and certainly would not have lost Disney that amount of money. An example of a movie that came out this year in that price range is John Wick 4. costing 100 million, meaning 3 John Wick 4s for the same price as the Marvels. These films need to follow a clear direction, allowing the director control rather than 50 odd producers all pulling in different directions, leading to a movie by committee because of the massive investment and not wanting to take a chance that feels safe and like every other movie that's come out before, because bad movies are still remembered. If the director and main writer was given control to work out all the storyboarding beforehand, would help create one cohesive story than bits put together and then shooting, the movie would stop with the multiple different rewrites and reshoots leading to all these movies taking longer and costing so much more money. It will allow the VFX artists the time needed to create good CGI scenes rather than rushing out half-finished works, because they are working on multiple different effects that are never used. The Marvel's formula has not been working since after Endgame. The numbers don't lie, no matter how much people have denied it. The returns on these movies has been going down and are often a lot lower than the returns Disney wanted on their investments. I can only hope these recent failures creates the change needed for the movies to go back to what they used to be in phases 1 to 3. In the case of the MCU, they have to go back to stories that don't mean the end of the world or the galaxy is going to be destroyed in some way. Far more personal stories to each character, as it always brings up if the stakes are so high, why other important powerful characters not getting involved. You would gain far more personal connection with all the characters, and leaving those stakes to the eventual team-up movies like Phase 1 to 3 with Thanos, rather than the recent Kang who has failed in every way possible, supposed to be a threat that is defeated every time he is seen, with likeable main characters who have their own flaws, not just able to do everything without any struggles, leading to no growth or character arcs. Have personal, motivated and threatening villains, or have the villain be the other side of the same coin, the hero taken to the extreme if he follows along that path, not a wimp who can be defeated at any time, only seemingly in the film for the main character to defeat. The same can be applied for Star Wars, with the main characters to the villains, getting back to the spirit of the OT, prequels and extended universe stories, giving the fans what they have wanted in this established world, not just adding things in for lazy convenience or spectacle that break the rules of the world. Ultimately, Disney just needs to get back to entertaining people first, as you have some of the most beloved IP and franchises in the world, instead of looking at the bottom lines trying to predict the future, oversaturating the market to increase those profits and bloating movies far past a reasonable amount to hit that billion mark. Listen to your customers and fans, they are your future. Just give the fans what they have wanted with their characters and stories, adapting the originals to the best of your ability and creating new stories in the spirit of the world they reside, rather than forcing everything to be the same or risk becoming forgettable.
Like tears in rain.
Anyway, if you like what you heard, please like and subscribe for more.